it seemed that you took an interest in YouTube and other social media things maybe a few years earlier than a lot of other people who like ran to it at
Mm.
the beginning of all this, um, and had some interesting video editing and interesting ideas. And
Yeah.
even, which was the coolest part, was watching that video of you live in London,
Yeah.
where you had dancers, you had
Yeah.
this whole thing. It was like
Yeah.
you have production online, and then
Mm.
you also have a serious production
Mm.
live.
Mm.
Um,
Not cheap.
and no.
Yeah.
It did not look like a whole
Yeah.
string section and everything. I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Out of curiosity, have you always been more performance oriented, or did that grow from something?
I think I think one of the things that spurred me on to do this was the fact that I was never actually signed to a major label, so I never had a machine to do all these things. You know what I mean? Uh,
Right.
so I thought if I'm going to exist as a recording artist, I've got to be able to bring something to the table that I know I can do on my own. And you can get as resourceful and inventive as you like with video. You can spend a lot of money or you can spend no money, you know, and it's up to you how good you want to make it. Um, so that was one thing. The other thing is back in about 1998, I got very ensconced in internet marketing. And one of the reasons I did that, I was stuck in a record deal that I couldn't get out of. And I had literally the potential of about 2 years before I could even talk to other record companies. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's every nightmare you've ever heard with a label, but at least this was a small label, and they did eventually let me go, so I could talk to another label. But I thought, what do I do in these 2 years? You know, and the internet was coming around, and I thought, well, I could jump on this and I could study it and I could see how to manipulate Google's rankings and things like that. So I did a bit of a crash course on my own, and to great effect. I mean, I'd started a company called PlayJazzGuitar.com, and it was all internet based, and I came up first in the search engine rankings. So my whole sort of fascination with computers and digital marketing came at a very early age. I mean, literally, this was around the 2000 mark. So when YouTube came onto the market, it was just the next step forward. It was like, okay, this is easy now. Now I've got a space to store my videos, and a whole new way to market what I already know how to
That's
market.
huge.
Yeah,
Yeah, place to store all that,
yeah,
all that
yeah. So
information.
it became very easy when YouTube came around because I could jump on that too. Yeah.
Um, how along were you in your career when you decided to adopt the social media landscape thing?
Well, my first solo album was 1998. Uh, the internet sort of came around 1998, 1999, and we were really into the internet by 2000. So, I mean, I was 3 records in. You know what I mean? 3 records in. But they were
Sure.
independent. As I said, they were independent records. A little label in New York, and I thought I've got to be able to bring somebody to the table. I mean, they're not sending me out on tour with big name artists. There's simply a little distribution method for me to put my record into. So I've got to do something. So I did.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. It's a very proactive attitude. The so Out of curiosity, I also enjoyed asking people kind of how they've been dealing with everything. So just because for a lot of, I'm assuming you tour quite a bit and play around quite a bit.
Mm.
Um, Everyone has dealt with it differently and been hit differently, especially if they've already had a YouTube presence or they've already like seen other modes of income
Yeah.
as a possibility. How was March, April for you?
Uh, well, to be honest with you, not a lot changed for me, because like a lot of recording artists and producers, we have a studio at our houses, and it just became an excuse for me to just jump into a project without having to leave the house. So, I mean, I had to embrace the whole idea that there were no gigs to be had, and I wasn't touring, and I was fine with it. It was like, I miss it, and I'm sure at some point it'll come back in some form. But I just totally ensconced myself into a new project which I'm doing, and it's an orchestral project. So I mean, I kind of put myself back into school, studying orchestral writing, and so it was just what are you going to do? We're stuck. What do you do? Do you mope around and binge watch Netflix, or do you really put this time to good use and practice and make a record and get better? So that's how I chose to adopt it.
Right. Right. Nice. And so how you've dealt with it changed over the last 6 months or whatever like that? Like, was there a moment where you were like, maybe I'll just wait this out, and then there was a tipping point where you're like, nope, orchestration college it is, like, I gotta move forward? Like,
yeah, I mean, at some point, how much damn string writing can you do? I mean, at one point I had to put it all to bed and go, I can't do this anymore, this is too intense. There's a lot we still can do. I mean, we can go for walks, we can go to the supermarket, and we can talk to our friends, and it's not awful. It's a new world, and we have to embrace it. I mean, to answer your question, yeah, I mean, there have been times when I haven't been pulling my hair out at all. It's not been that, but you start to reevaluate what the future might bring, and the changes and all that.
And that would actually segue nicely into that next question, which is, how have your plans for like 6-month future changed, and how have your plans for 2-year future, like a question mark, or have they changed?
No, nothing's changed for me. I mean, I'm very project based. I'm very like in the trenches all the time. I'm not interested in looking back to a golden age. So whatever the project is, I'm jumping into it, and I want to do it to the best and make sure it gets released. And I got into this live streaming thing, hence these cameras and things. So yeah, I mean, if we're looking at 6 months, I'd be looking at finishing this record out and maybe releasing it at the end of that 6 months. If we're looking at 2 years, I see probably another record being finished, and hopefully the start of some touring to begin. There may also, it's possible that by the end of this COVID-19 malarkey, the live thing could come back in droves, because most people are pulling their hair out. They're going, when's this all going to end? So I think once the sort of consumer confidence comes back, and people aren't so fearful of being in a room with other people, I think people are just going to go crazy for live music. Now, in what form, that remains to be seen, because one side of me keeps sort of tapping me on the shoulder and saying, maybe this is the end of the kind of the jazz era as we know it, and the next live thing is going to be something else, or the young guys are going to come up, and there's going to be a whole new wave of something, whatever it is. I hope that happens, to tell you the truth. I hope the young guys like you will jump in and cause a ruckus, and something comes out of that, because us old guys, we're basically hanging on to what we're doing and trying desperately hard to stay relevant and keep a career together. But at the end of the day, nobody's buying a Chris Standring record and going, wow, this is something I've never heard before, because I've already done 13 or 14 of them. So it's going to take the young guys to come out of the woodwork with something ragingly new to get people excited. So and believe you me, somebody will do it. There's never a reason.
What about the break in live music?
Yeah.
Would effectively retire older styles of jazz.
Well, for instance, when I think about it, small venues, for instance, which is makes up a large proportion of the venues that I play at, like jazz clubs, for instance. I'm not sure a lot of them will be able to survive this. If this actually does go out for another 2 years, and I hope I'm wrong, but there's a lot of restaurants, hand to mouth businesses. They're not, they're not rich, they're not wealthy at all. They're hanging on. Uh,
Yeah,
I mean, I just saw that Catalina Bar and Grill in Hollywood, who've got a $30,000 rental lease to pay every month. They're doing a GoFundMe campaign to hang on. Now, can they hang on? Can they make it work? I mean, we'll have to see. But that's a 30,000 a month is a lot to find when there's zero income. You know,
right.
so the logistics tells me that a lot of small venues will just go away. They can't. I don't think they can hang on for 2 years unless the government is literally handing them a $30,000 check every month for 2 years. Now, are they going to do that? Probably not. So, so the question is, if we're all playing those clubs and they all go away, what happens then? You know, festivals will probably come back slowly but surely. So there'll be some of those. But I mean, it just remains to be seen. I don't mean to be doom and gloom because that's not me at all. But I am a realist. So we do need to think about what may and what may not be going forward.
Sure. Um, do you have any advice for anyone kind of entering the business now? So I have a lot of
Mm.
friends who may have graduated like last May.
Yeah.
I'm done in December.
Mm.
I'm sure that other people are. Some people maybe next May. When I, for instance, when I graduated my undergrad in 2010, moved to New York, it was very easy to just like be anywhere and go anywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and then to people who are maybe a little bit younger, graduating now, how would you suggest they go about like not just graduating and go like, I guess I just continue
Yeah.
to practice?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh, yeah,
Well, I've been saying this for a long, long time, and I don't think now is any different. We have to be entrepreneurs. So if you want to be a musician and you want to be a musician, on call for hire, that's going to be a tough one. It's going to be up to us to be completely out of the box thinkers and figure out a way to get known, which is exactly what I did with the internet all those years ago. Um, and if you're talking about being an artist, it's about growing a brand. So it's really about whatever it is that you do, you just keep doing it. You know what I mean? And you grow, of course, as an artist, but you keep doing it, and the longer you keep doing it, you're gonna build your brand, and you're gonna build a fan base, and you can use all the tools to do that. Now, but being an artist is very different from being a sideman. And
right.
and the problem is right now is if there's no gigs to be had, being a sideman is not logistical. It's not something that you can bank on. Hope it turns around, of course, but let's assume that it won't for a good while. I think it's. I think there's every reason to practice your instrument and become a great player. But I mean, I think you need to focus on making something happen rather than waiting for something to happen to you, which is what we all did when we were young. I mean, we would all wait for the phone to ring. I mean, literally, we would hang on. How many answer phone messages have we got today? How many gigs? No, that all went out the window as soon as I signed my first record deal. That was gone. That was gone forever. And I had to wake up the following morning and go, what can I do today to keep this little machine alive? And that's the way you got to think, especially now. And you can do it. We can all do it. If there's something for people to respond to, I do think that certainly if you're going to be an artist, because that's all I know to talk about right now, you have to have something that somebody responds to. It's not just about being good. It's actually not just about being great. Trust me, there's many, many better guitar players than I am. But I'm me. I'm 100% unique because there's nobody else like me, and there's nobody else like you. So what you have to do is bring the you out of you, and make that something that is larger than life, and make it something that somebody responds to. And I have to say, I've spent a lifetime, a career lifetime, thinking about music that people respond to and what they don't like. What music that people don't really respond to, unless of course you're a musician, is music that's trying to be clever. You'll never have a career as a recording artist if you're trying to be clever, unless your audience are musicians or music students. Now there are tons of them, but if you want to appeal to somebody who knows nothing about music, the whole idea of trying to be clever and waiting for peer approval has just got to go out the window. That's a very high school mentality, and I see many professional musicians still with that mentality, and they worry why they haven't really done it. And I'm convinced you have to get into the idea that you're an artist and you're creating something that is bigger than you. It has nothing to do with you. The minute you try to be clever, it's you coming out. It's basically your ego. So you've got to strip the ego away and go, okay, what does this song require? What does this composition, what's it trying to say? And feed into that. And once you can tap into that, it's almost like you're an observer. You're a person sitting on a fence going, yeah, I really like that. I'd want to listen to that. So there's all these different viewpoints. And I think once you can tap into that way of thinking, you have a potential career ahead of you.
How would you suggest? Because the cleverness, you can hear it when the whole song is just a clever riddle or something.
Yeah.
But like the entirety of prog or fusion can border on too clever, but then there are the stars like. For instance, someone whose album I thought as a musician was insanely clever and really interesting, but also hit me on a gut level, and I knew it. I knew it did its task well because my mom ended up really liking it. Is Avishai Cohen's the bassist albums, like in general, like Continuo or Gently Disturbed, where it's like very clever trio arranging. But she loved it, and I loved it on several levels.
I actually, let me define what I mean by trying to be clever. You take somebody like John McLaughlin, who writes extremely complicated music and plays ultra fast, and he's not trying to be clever. Do you see what the difference? That is who John McLaughlin is. He is simply being who he is. I'm talking about somebody trying to be clever. Do you see the difference? Do you see what I'm saying?
So a clever person versus someone trying to be.
Yes, it's a really clear distinction. If you're trying to be clever, it'll come across like, he's trying to be clever. This is not genuine. This is not who he is. That's not who she is. So it's a very subtle one. I should have articulated that better, but I'm glad we got to it.
Yeah, no, and it is a certain distinction when you sit down and you're like, haha, I'll show whoever, versus anyway, so basically a lot of your recommendations would be artist related, and again, it is because maybe the career is artist related for people graduating right now, like develop a brand,
And by the way, talking about the brand, the sooner you know who you are, the better. Because a lot of people go through careers, they're in a band, they're in another band, they go solo, they do a different kind of project with 3 people. There's no brand. Do you see what I'm saying? They're simply just going through their music career, trying to find something that sticks. Whereas I mean, sometimes you have to do that, but I guess what I'm saying is, as soon as you know what your brand is, and you can grow that, you're in really good shape. I mean, a great example I always use is Pat Metheny, who totally knew exactly what he wanted to do from the age of 19, and nothing would stop him. You know,
Right.
he wasn't joining bands to see if he could get signed to a record label. You know, he knew that he wanted to be Pat Metheny, the artist, and he got in a van with three other guys and toured the country for $20 a gig, and until it worked for him. You know, having said that, you do need to figure out who you are, and that takes time. You can't rush it, but once you get a sense of this makes sense, let's run with this. You know, for instance, when I made my first record in '98, you know, I'd done a lot of writing and arranging and touring at that point, so I kind of I'd come to a sense of I'm ready to do this. You know, and luckily it sort of was very well received, and it was the impetus to keep doing that. But it came at the right time. I'd been in bands, and you know, I'd figured out enough stuff to know what I didn't want to be a part of. And
Out of curiosity, if you don't mind, this
yeah,
might be too personal. I don't know. How old were you when you came out with that album after your experience arranging and being in band?
yeah. Well, my first proper official solo album was released in 1998. It was called Velvet. However, I did do a band project in 1996 called Solar System, which was an acid jazz, very experimental project, which was supposed to be my first
That
solo
doesn't sound like
album.
it's on brand with
No,
everything else
no, it
at
wasn't.
first.
But the thing is, that was supposed to be my first solo album, but we just got so experimental. We had rappers and a horn section and singers. It just became less about me because, you know, we were just in it and responding to everything. So I wasn't ready to make a solo album, you know. However, back in 1989, when I lived in London, I did make a solo album that was really, really fusion and kind of very, very different from what I would do now. Which, I mean, I wasn't ready to do that either because I couldn't get arrested with it. Nobody wanted to sign it. But you know, you have to go through this. You know what I mean? You have to go through and figure out what you don't want to do, because as much as what you do want to do, the music business is so hugely diverse with so many different facets that you can pursue. You got to figure out what you don't want to do. You know?
So it would be you. So two things. So you were in music for at least a decade
Mm.
before your first album. So you were definitely. It wasn't like Pat Metheny at 19 necessarily for you.
Hell no.
You tried a few things and
Yeah.
then were like, nope,
Yeah.
nope,
I
nope.
wish I was Pat Metheny at 19, because I'd probably be a lot better than I am and far more successful, maybe. Who knows? It's hard to know. But we're all on our own journey, you see, which is why you can't you can't worry about what may have been, because it took all that stuff for me to figure out what I wanted to be and what I didn't want to be. You know.
Exactly, for sure. And so maybe entering into the music industry, you kind of had a string of open doors, you know, very open-minded to possibilities, a string of open doors, and then you kind of tried that one, closed
Mm.
that door, tried that one, closed that door.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of people end up being maybe they get it could become damn it. Let me try that. It becomes a piece of advice that you hear, especially as you get older, especially as you've been in music for a while. They're like, "Oh, keep open-minded and try everything."
Yeah.
I heard YouTube is interesting now, so get good at YouTube, and everyone's a production person now, so get good at
Right.
production, and blah blah blah
Right.
blah. And and people might not understand that at some point maybe you gave production a shot and it was a horrible
Mm.
fit. What do you say to people who may have unfortunately landed on, you know, I love gigging, I love
Yeah.
touring, I
Yeah.
love doing that, I
Yeah.
love,
Yeah.
like, and they built a sideman
Right.
thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I
how
mean.
would you when you know the idea of building a brand is more artist related,
Mm.
but not everyone at music school is an artist. That is for sure.
Right,
And
absolutely. Yeah, it's actually
they
it's a
still
rare
need
thing.
it's rarer than not. So like say you have 50 students graduating, three are artists,
Mm,
one is good.
mm,
Um, so we have 47 people who might make a really interesting contribution to music.
yeah.
How would you say to build that brand when your brand is like,
Well, I mean, we've got to get real. If there's no touring to be had, are we right to be pursuing touring? I mean, I'm
oh,
saying,
absolutely not.
I
But
am.
so,
However, the touring scene could very well change. We're all expecting to at some point, which is why we should, as I said before, practice your instruments and get to be the best musician you can be. So when it does open up and touring is what you want to do, then there's a reality for you. But the problem is, this is not where we are right now, and I don't really see it happening for a couple of years. However, having said that, young people at university and music college, they've got 2 years to do their thing and prepare for the music business to change.
right.
It's actually it's could be just fine for you people. You know, just use the time wisely, but also be realistic. If you need to, I mean, we old guys, we need to make a living. So if the touring's going away, what do we do? Whereas if you're young, I mean, if you can go and live with your parents for a couple of years while you figure it all out, then that's fine too. You know what I mean? Whatever you need to do. But going back to your point, I mean, I have tried a few things that clearly don't make me happy. For instance, I will tell you that technology, although I embrace it because this is what we need to do, it doesn't make me happy. I get very, very stressed and panicky when things go wrong, especially when you're live streaming, for heaven's sake. It's not fun, especially at this stage of my life. I want things to be nice and calm. So I question things like, do I want to be stuck in the studio or doing a live streaming thing every week? I see everybody else do it and they're all over it. But I mean, if it doesn't make me happy, why should I pursue that? So these are interesting questions, and it goes back to what you're saying. If touring's what I love to be. That's what I want to be. But the reality is, we're stuck in a recording studio, and I've got to learn to love live streaming, and other people have got to learn to not like touring so much. It's just where we are right now.
Sure. I guess, right. I would be curious. I would be curious how, I've never checked a lot of backing musicians' websites.
Yeah.
That is something that kind of gets encouraged. Have an identity, have a website.
Mm.
Although I imagine if every backing musician had an own singular identity, it'd be a little strange because you'd be hiring artists basically.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, I do think if you're a sideman, there are things you can do to pursue, sort of promoting yourself as a service person, because that's what we're in the service of music. So if that's where you want to be, then it doesn't stop you promoting yourself as an artist would, but you're going to do it in a slightly different fashion. Get a website together, be on social media, interact with people that you would like to work with, for instance, and get a home studio together. I would absolutely suggest that every single musician who wants to be a professional now gets it together and puts some kind of facility together in their houses. So you can send files. I mean, people have been doing it for a long time, but I just went to London and talked to all my old friends from the late 80s who are now only just now getting a studio together in their houses because they want to keep working. They're just doing what they know that they have to do. All these things, use what tools you have to connect with people. And honestly, the number one piece of advice I give to everybody is just be great, be absolutely phenomenal. Especially if we're in the professional world of being a schooled musician, being a great classical player or a jazz player or a session player or an all-round player, being able to sight read well, just do what it is that you set your mind to. Just be absolutely phenomenal about it. Because if you are phenomenal, somebody's going to call you. Somebody's going to want to work with you. If you're a nice guy,
Right. Right. It's true. And so these people are just kind of coming around to it. Out of curiosity, where you stand on, like, do you have amps set up, or are you going DI, or for your home studio? I imagine, especially for people who live in apartments, a amp profiler or plug-in, really decent plugins might be the way to go, because you don't want to have someone knocking on your...
Well, we can do all that. That's the great thing. We can do amp modeling. We can, plugins. I mean, whatever you have to do to get there, then do it. I mean, if you can put an amp in a closet and mic it up, so much the better. But whatever you have to do, I have all that. I'm not a big gear guy. I mean, basically, I've got a few guitars. I've got really my own voice in an instrument. So I have that guitar and a few others for recording. Strats, acoustics, and I've got a telly and just instruments to help make the production sound good. And it's not just my one guitar, but
right.
I'm not a gearhead, so I want to get my tone. So I have one amp, a couple of speakers. Actually, I mean, I have other amps too, but I essentially use one that I'm recording with. And I've got amp modeling and tons of effects and delays and reverbs and whatever we need to sound better than we are.
Speaking of reverb, I actually just found out that there's a big difference between room or medium room and rec room A, or studio C, and blah 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 blah, which are rooms but sound an awful more like a room than room reverb does.
Right.
The
Well,
studio.
I guess it really depends on what the room is that they recorded the reverb in. Or they modeled it from. I mean, who knows? A room is a room. A room could be big. A room could be small. I don't know what they're talking about. As soon as I hear it, I'll know what it is and if I want to use it or not. That's all you need.
Yeah. No. Absolutely. Yeah. That's fair enough. Or even just switching from normal to high resolution on. I have a little fractal. Switching from normal to high fractal.
Yeah.
Axe-Fx.
Mm-hmm.
The from normal to high resolution reverb and delay, you definitely hear a little bit of a difference. Maybe not for live always, but for recording, right. You really want to hit that button.
Yeah.
Okay, so would there be any kind of parting? I know it is a peculiar scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I guess so. To sum up. I have to sum up because I have to make a compilation of,
you
of
got to
things.
sum up.
So I want to make sure everything is like in one area if I want to get it into like a...
In conclusion,
In conclusion, so you've been dealing with COVID by basically doing what you normally do. You're going to make another album. You're going to reach out on social media. Touring is a thing that can come later.
Mm-hmm.
How have you been able to monetize the things that you do so you don't need touring?
This is the question of all questions, and I'm very lucky in that I can answer it. Basically telling you that a majority of my income is passive. It's from royalties, distribution payouts, and sound exchange, which is internet performance income from radio. All that stuff keeps me quite comfortable, or certainly comfortable enough for me to not sweat too much. It certainly keeps the mortgage paid and all that stuff. And while I'm playing the radio game, which I'm constantly doing, I've constantly got a song that I'm pushing to radio, and thankfully I'm established enough in my genre that they respond to it, and I kind of know, I've got a sense of what is going to excite them and what's not. You know what I mean? I'm quite good at that, and I have people that help decipher that as well. So while I'm playing the radio game, I mean, it is a business. I mean, I have to pay money in order to get money back. It's still a business, but I'm lucky enough that I can play that game almost exclusively right now and be okay. And also, I'm producing other artists, so they pay me, and I get passive income from BMI and places like that if they do well, which is in my interest to make them do well. So I have to produce them well, if I want a career. So yeah, I mean, ostensibly I'm working full time in my studio now, which at this stage of the game is not something I don't want to do. It's a good thing.
Do you produce in the smooth jazz genre, or are you producing anyone?
Well, I would produce anybody if the situation was right. If it was something that excited me, and I do like working with really great players and people that can play. I don't want to have to fix everything. You know what I mean? But for the most part, I'm known as somebody who does well at radio in the contemporary smooth jazz format. I'm not terribly fond of the term, but I do completely take advantage of the format because ostensibly it's a pop radio format with instrumentalists playing the melody instead of vocalists, and I don't mind that. I think as long as you do it in a classy, vibey way, it can be fine. The worst of it is awful. It's dreadful. but honestly, in any genre, the worst of it is awful. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just as I said, just be great. Just do the best you can, and hopefully it'll work out.
Yeah. Great. Oh, I guess lastly, what made you want to, again, I understood the embracing of internet things, embracing of the YouTube videos and whatnot, making your own music videos. Did that influence the Live in London set, or did the Live in London set influence the YouTube?
No, I have a business partner in London who basically, we did a joint venture on this project. I mean, there was something like 48 people involved in this project. It was actually a big deal, and I couldn't believe that I was on stage thinking, oh, I better be good. There's a lot of people here that have got put some work into this, which was a little bit scary at the time. But I have this business partner in London, and it was his idea, and also a DJ at Jazz FM in London. It was their idea to basically put on a concert in London, and it was, they wanted to make a big deal of it. It was not just a gig at a jazz club. They wanted to really go crazy and make it a super production, but more importantly, charge a huge ticket price in order to come to it, which made me even more nervous. So damn it, they pulled it off. They, we talked about getting some dancers, and I hired a choreographer, a friend of mine in London, who did a fabulous job. I hired a string section. I mean, I love working with string players, and we had an 8-piece string section and a London rhythm section. And my this business partner in London, he had this idea that he would video the whole thing. And not only that, the whole thing would be a live album. Now, what did I tell you at the beginning of this? That I'm a panicker and I stress out. Okay, think about what I've just told you. It's like 48 people. It's a one-time thing, and it's going to be live on video, and it's going to be a live album that's going to be released. How we pulled that off without me just having a heart attack, I have no idea at all. But we did it, and I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, and I do need to step up to the plate here, and I'm at the right time of my career to do it, how can I do this and lessen the odds of disaster? Well, so we put on a little tour together of 8 concerts, and so 7 shows before this. We had 7 shows to really get the show under our belt, and everybody was at the top of their game performance wise. And so the final show was this live event that people paid quite a lot of money to come and witness this live recording, and they were all wearing headphones, a little bit like the snarky puppy thing, you know. We stole their idea, and damn it, you know, we played great. I mean, everybody really came through, and the nice thing is I personally got to take the record back home here to LA, and I spent some time mixing it, so it was as good or bad as I decided to make it, which was me being totally controlling, but yeah, I mean, it's so no, we didn't really have the internet. I mean, it was some that all that came later. We just wanted to put
Yeah, it
a
was
show
just a
together.
different thing.
Yeah, and then of course we had these recordings, and then so we put them up on the internet later, you know, for people to see.
That's perfect. All right. So yeah, I was curious if you've just always been this very extroverted performer
No,
who's always put on.
I'm not extroverted at all. I'm actually very shy and retiring and insecure, just like every British person. But that doesn't
But
mean
yeah,
to say,
you're right.
that doesn't mean to say that you shouldn't try these things. And when you're on the stage, it's like, okay, here I am. Let's just do our best. You know, you're there. I
As
mean,
soon as I saw that there were dancers, I was like, "Oh, this is a performance. This
yeah,
this is definitely
yeah,
like
yeah.
this is
Yeah.
this is
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, I left to my own devices, that whole event probably could not have happened. I couldn't have pulled it off, you know. But I had 2 other partners involved, and you know, they did a massive amount of work. So
and
I was very
it is
lucky.
really smart to record on night 8 when you're almost kind of like,
Oh, I had
you
to.
know,
Can you
oh yeah,
imagine?
let's just
You
do
imagine it being
something.
the first show of the week? Oh, no.
You're just like, are they going to dance behind me
Yeah,
during the solo? That's what's happening. Okay,
yeah,
fine. Like,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
No, we did it the right way around. Yeah.
good. The so I guess is there anything else you'd want to tell some possibly terrified, possibly not terrified near
Mm.
graduates?
Well, what are they terrified about? Are they terrified about the pandemic and the opportunity or lack of opportunities? Or are they terrified that they don't have what it takes to be a professional musician?
Probably, I would say the uncertainty with the constant barrage of
Yeah,
who knows what'll happen when, and
right,
maybe this earth will
right.
just explode before the music
Mm.
industry. You know, who there's tyranny, and there's the world falling apart, and there's
Sure, yeah.
social unrest,
There's
and
a
then
lot going
also,
on. Yeah.
yeah,
There's a lot to be terrified about. I do understand, yeah. Um, do the best you can. Honestly, I think we're at a time when we've got time to figure out who you are and who you want to be and who you don't want to be. I think that's the best I can say. Just try to figure out stuff without just driving yourself crazy too much. You know, it's the world's not going to end overnight, and the music business is not going to end overnight. So just try to figure out who you want to be. You know, what do you want to tell the world, and how can we get there? You know, the best way we can. You know,
great.
I wish I had a magic pill, because it would be a lot easier, wouldn't it? but there isn't a magic pill, and you know, for some strange reason, I think about all those years ago when so many people were waiting to be discovered, you know,
Mm.
and even, you know, people wanting record deals. They just think, if I could just get signed, if I could just get somebody to recommend me, you know, if I could just get this one gig on Saturday night, if I could just get this tour, you know, that's all nonsense. Nobody's signing you. Nobody's going to help you. Nobody's going to recommend you. You know, I've been in this business for, I don't know, what, 30 something years. I can tell you on one hand the amount of people that have actually gone out of their way to recommend me or help me. And the reason they did that at all was because it was actually going to help them. You know? Nobody's doing it. That's the point. I mean, you know, if somebody's putting a band together or for a studio, then they'll call the people they want, you know. But it's day to day. The whole thing's a process. Nobody's getting discovered, and there's no magic pill. What it is, it's a series of baby steps over a period of 50 years. And during those 50 years, you will do some amazing things, and you'll have some great times, and you'll have some difficult times.
In that case,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, a new question spawned just real quick.
Yeah.
Certain times, the industry, whether it be wide industry or whether it be your own college that you go to, celebrates some people who did just have someone call, who did just have someone text, who did just have someone DM, and then like their life changed, and next week they're on tour with Who Gives a Shit. You know, and it sounds from what you just said that's basically like you should just go, that's nice, and give it no attention.
No, you do give it attention, but that's not to say that there aren't defining moments in people's careers. I have one. I mean, you know, that one thing that I can count on my hand was basically somebody recommending me to be part of a tour because, you know, the guitar player on the tour went off with Tracy Chapman and couldn't do this tour, and so I was recommended because the guy that recommended me wanted me to play on the tour because he liked me playing with him. Do you see what I'm saying? It's, you know, he recommended me out of purely selfish things, but from my point of view, he was a savior because, you know, I got on that tour. I met 4 other A-list stars who I ended up signing a record deal and getting them to play on my album. They are defining moments. It's what you do with these defining moments. Now, I could have just got on that tour and it could have been just another tour, and suddenly I'm looking for another tour. But what I did with that tour is I was absolutely aware of the fact that there were 4 A-list well-known artists on that tour that I could work with. I could get them to play on my record, or, you know, maybe I could be in their band, or, you know what I mean, or we could do something together. And I was smart enough to go to a record company in New York and saying, look, you know, do you want to do this record? I've got these 2 famous guys on my record, and I'm on this tour right now. I mean, this might be a good thing. So I positioned myself. I used that to get to the next place for me. Now, that was a defining moment for me because I used the opportunity. Had I not used the opportunity, that would not have been a defining moment for me. It would just have been a gig.
Well, it would have been, you know, quite a gig, but maybe the lesson learned there or lesson taught there isn't the gig itself. Isn't that like, you know, congratulations, you got on a cool gig. It's all right. How, you know, the lesson is the leverage that you used it for. The lesson is, you know, is what you made it turn into. That makes sense. That's actually that's very different than like, isn't it amazing he plays with so and so? Being like, yeah, like I don't know what else to say to that, but isn't it amazing all these things he leveraged that tour into? Be like, yes, that's very interesting. That's a fantastic point. Thank you for that.
And also I think that the final thing I would say to all young aspiring people is hustle hard, because I know some young guys in the music business who are doing exactly that, and they are just doing great. You know, there will be somebody always that comes out of the woodwork just scaring everybody because they're having all this success, and you ask yourself, well, why is it happening to them? They're hustling. They're behind the scenes. They're doing all that it takes. You know, it's a relationship business. It's about working. with people you like. I mean, I remember thinking back in the day, well, can't I just call people up and tell them I play well and send them a tape or something? You know what I mean? They can listen to. That never worked for me, and honestly, it worked for very few people. People work with people that they like, that are also great. You know what I mean? I think the given is you have to have the talent, and then just be a nice guy. You know, just be cool and easy and not too pushy. That's another thing because people want to push ahead, but if you appear pushy, you can push somebody into the back of the corner and they don't want to work with you. But if you can just dangle carrots, do you know what I mean? Dangle carrots and be super nice, and it's social dynamics. It's something to study to perfect. It's not easy, but it's learning to be a good person.
Would that be so? You have to be as competitive as you would at a law firm, but you can't be so clearly a shark.
I think that's absolutely right. Yeah, I think you got to be a bit more sneaky about it. but honestly, it's not even about being sneaky. You've got to be authentic, because people don't want to work with people that are insincere. If they think you're trying to be nice and putting on a smile, but yet they're just kind of trying to seduce you into hiring them, that people see that. Authenticity is a powerful thing. It really is. So be the person that is a great guy and people want to work with, and all those authentic things that will just lead to success if you've got talent as well.
Right. Basically, yeah. Work on yourself a little more.
Yeah.
Maybe open up your mindset a little bit. Because I only ask that because it seems every now and again when I hear "be a positive person," be a likable person, I don't know that many people that are so unlikable that they have no friends.
Yeah.
So
right.
I don't know if there's always something I'm missing, or if I just don't happen to know people I don't like.
Yeah.
Because because every now and again I hear that and I go, shit, am I too negative? And then I go, no, I would identify like you do as like someone who's like sees something for what it is and goes, that's what that is, right?
Right.
And that can be seen as negative every now and again if you're like, that situation is trash. That's what I'm seeing, right? And then they're like, you're negative, being like, well...
it's difficult because I find that as serious musicians, and I don't mean to sound elitist when I say that, but I mean people who put themselves in a room and practice for 8 hours, and just want to absorb themselves. We can be insular people, and not necessarily the most social people. I'm sure rock and roll people are far more social. But I just find that a certain type of person who really wants to be great at their instrument and practice. Sometimes we need to spend a bit of time on our personalities so we can connect. Connecting is super important in the music business. It's a social business. So we need to live life a little bit too. And I have to tell myself to do that more and more these days, because it's very easy to just sit here in my man cave and talk to people like you.
Well, it is also a little safer to do that connecting online. It is easy to leave a comment, do some DMing that you don't need to maybe respond in real time with. Like, you can kind of, I guess almost DMing a hero or leaving comments would be like playing with a backing track.
Right.
And then once COVID's released, you can like go out and do out to a show. That's the gig. That's the improv.
Yeah.
But well, great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope it's been
something
useful.